and welcome to Who Gets Ahead, the podcast series where we talk about what we're doing to increase socioeconomic diversity at senior levels in financial and professional services across the UK, and why we need to do it. I'm your host, Yasmin Chinwala, and I'm a partner at a capital markets think tank called New Financial, and I lead the Diversity and Culture programme. We have a vision for equity of progression, where high performance is valued over fit and polish. And over the course of this series, we'll be joined by senior representatives from across financial and professional services who are all involved with the Government Commission Socioeconomic Diversity Task Force led by the City of London Corporation. And for more information on the task force, please visit cityoflondon.gov.uk/Who Gets Ahead, where you can sign up to our newsletter. Today on Who Gets Ahead, we're joined by Chris Cummings, the Chief Executive of the Investment Association. A very warm welcome to you, Chris.
Hi, Yasmin. It's great to be with you today.
Chris grew up on a council estate in West Yorkshire in the 1970s and 80s and was the first in his family to go to university. While there, he was handed a leaflet on how the city works, which included details of 2 days' work experience in London, and the rest is history. So, Chris, can you tell us a bit more about your family setup and how you came to London and what led you to a career in financial services?
Oh, thanks, Yasmin. It's great to be asked to do this, actually. So, as you mentioned, I grew up in a council estate in Yorkshire at a time when, the coal mining industry was going through a really rough patch. It's coming to its end. I remember the only time I had a discussion with a careers tutor at school, I think called the careers tutor, who, when I went to talk to him about what I might want to do in life, he said, well, it's a fairly easy choice. You either go down the coal mines or you go into the clog factory. We still used to call it the clog factory. It was a shoe manufacturing company. It started making clogs, and those were the two career options that he gave to me. And I said, well, I've heard about this thing called university. What happens at university? And he looked me in the eye and said, lads like you don't go to university. So that was probably the best piece of advice I had, because from that moment on I was determined I was going to go to university, because I just always push back when people have said you can't do something. It's given me the impetus to say, well, why not? Let me give it a go. So fortunately, despite being a little bit on the dyslexic side, I managed to get through some A-levels and get a place at university. When I was going off to university, I knew more people who were going off to prison than were going off to university. So it was a bit of a bumpy ride, actually, for a few years when I was growing up. Anyway, I got there and got a leaflet called How the City Works, which was just amazing. I'd heard about this place called the City. It was on the 10 o'clock news, and there was a business section, and the journalist would always say, and now from the city. And I always thought, well, what is this place? What is this strange place that even gets on the TV? So when I got the leaflet, I went to see the careers desk at the university I was at and said, could you tell me more about this course, please? What's involved in it? And they said, well, we're not sure if they're running it this year, so you probably won't get on because it's always very busy. So I thought, well, if they're not running it, then why don't I write to them and say, please run this course, I'd love to come on it. And so, not realising that was a bit of a silly thing to do. Anyway, I wrote off to the City of London Corporation and said, can I please come on How the City runs the course that you're running? Can I please volunteer to come on it if you run it again in the future? And I got this lovely letter back that said, yeah, actually, we hadn't really known if we were going to run it or not, but why not come down? So I had 2 days going through Lloyd's of London, the Bank of England. A few of us went on this amazing tour of the city. Got to meet some fantastic people, and I just thought, wow, what a different world. It was a million miles away from the council house that I grew up in, West Yorkshire, and it really gave me the desire to take my life in a completely different direction. So it is thanks to a breakfast meeting that a few of us were invited to with the Lord Mayor, who then was a chap called Sir Christopher. I can't remember his surname, but I thought, well, I'm Christopher. He's Christopher. Why don't I give this a go and try and get a job in the city? And that's basically why there are a few twists and turns along the way, but that's how I got into the industry today.
And there's a nice circularity there, Chris, that it was a City of London Corporation initiative that enticed you into the city, and it's the City London Corporation initiative that we're talking about today when we're talking about the task force. So turning to your role at the Investment Association as a trade body for the investment industry, where do you think the industry is right now? Where is it starting from on the subject of socioeconomic diversity?
So ours is an industry which approaches the subject of diversity with a sense of humility. Over the last years, our industry didn't have to work too hard to attract really brilliant people to come to work in it. Perhaps the problem was, though, that we were all using the same definition of really brilliant people. Amazing academic performance, CVs to die for in the terms of the extracurricular activities that they had exposure to. And so people who you would look at them as a potential candidate and say, they tick all the boxes, and actually they would fit in around here. They could hit the ground running. So that rather led to an industry view of what good recruitment looked like, and one where the industry that prides itself on absolutely being a meritocracy once you're in it, but perhaps wasn't thinking deeply enough about how to attract talent from the widest range of universities, secondary schools, people with different life experience who could add diversity to their firms. And so over the last 5 years when I've been involved in the IAA, and of course before then, what we've seen is the industry really, really eager to play catch up and to try and, if anything, get ahead of other parts of financial services, to say, actually, we are an industry that prizes diversity. And actually, it's neurodiversity that we're really looking for. It's beyond ethnicity and gender. It's beyond race and other more easily recognizable types. What we're interested in is people who can bring a greater worldview, a richer experience into the organizations that we're working for. It's pretty much actually the conversation that we have with investee companies about what's going to make them successful. And we want to see greater diversity in investee companies. So, of course, we have to hold the mirror up to ourselves and say, are we being as thoughtful? Are we being as encouraging? Are we being as welcoming to the people we want to attract into our industry as we should always have been? So I think this is a really exciting moment in the industry's development, particularly post-COVID, which has opened up many opportunities and a wider geography for people to come in and work in the industry. It used to be said that the industry was a great place to work in, meaning London or Edinburgh. And I think we've gone beyond those traditional stereotypes of thinking where people need to be based because of COVID. So, yeah, it's an exciting period of change for our industry.
Looking back, Chris, there's definitely been a shift in the type of person that comes into the investment industry, and arguably because of the professionalization of investment management. And now the sort of default position is you have to be a CFA holder, you certainly have to be a graduate. And there was perhaps previously more of a more open route for a smart young person to be able to get into the investment industry without having gone through various exams. Can you reflect on that a little, perhaps, for us?
There has been a view that to get ahead, even to get into investment management, you had to go to Oxford or Cambridge or Edinburgh, one of the great universities. And that's given a view that unless you went to those places, you wouldn't be welcome in our industry for some reason. That's absolutely not the case. And in fact, one of the things I'm proudest of is the work of Investment 2020, which just in the last few years has managed to place 2,000 kids in firms across our industry. It's given them a wonderful life experience, an opportunity to spend a year in investment management. And these are people who either have chosen to go to university, but it's not one of the great universities, it's one of the more modern universities, or indeed have chosen not to go to university at all. They've come straight from school and joined an investment management firm. And when I look at the people who are coming through Investment 2020, they bring just an incredible amount of life experience, a huge amount of enthusiasm, commitment, loyalty. I'm not surprised that retention rates are well into the 70-odd%. When we look at what happens to those people after a year, they make such an impact in the firms that they join that the firms are very keen to keep them. So it's a great success story, and also emblematic of how our industry is playing its role in bringing in people who actually will help us be the type of industry for the future that will be match fit for the future. And yes, look a lot more like the society that we serve, but actually better understand the saving and investing needs of tomorrow's customers. So this is a great win for the industry and for the clients that we're trying to serve.
Chris, what do you see as the Investment Association's role in driving forward the messages and the work of the Socioeconomic Diversity Task Force, which is very much focused on progression rather than that point of entry that you've just mentioned in Investment 2020?
So I'm hugely privileged to be playing a role in the task force. There's absolutely no doubt that from the investment management industry's point of view, it's mission critical that we attract the best people into the industry that we can do, but also that we nurture them and help them grow their career with us. The industry's also not always been on the front foot in attracting people in at different life stages in their careers. So the Socioeconomic group has got a major role to play in helping us address some of those issues, and more clearly articulating the fact that financial services generally, but the investment management industry in particular, is a warm and welcoming place where people from the widest socioeconomic background can make a difference, can make a successful career, can make a successful life for themselves in our industry. So it's our role in the Investment Association to work with the City of London Corporation and all the partners involved in the task force to help bring some rigour to the debate, to then amplify the conclusions and recommendations of the task force, and to make sure all of our member firms are engaged, but then putting the lessons into practice. If we only come up with a report, then this will have been a missed opportunity. This isn't about producing just another report that says what should be done. I do see our role as being about helping to operationalise the change and to make sure that when people outside of the industry look in, what they see is really successful role models, C-suite individuals who've had a more commonplace life experience than perhaps might have been the case or thought to be the case 5-10 years ago, where there was this view that unless you came from a public school, top university echelon, you could never get into our industry. So this is a moment to change it, and it's a real honour to be involved in playing a part in it.
Chris, it's exciting to hear your vision for the investment management industry today. I've got one final question for you. What would you tell your 10-year-old self, and what might your 10-year-old self think of Chris today?
I think what I tell my 10-year-old self is stick with it, kid. Continue to not to take no for an answer, and don't always go down the easy path. Sometimes the hard things are the ones that they're the ones that are worth achieving. And I think my 10-year-old self would say, I better make the most of my hair while I've got it then.
Thank you for listening to this final episode of Who Gets Ahead, and thank you to Chris Cummings for being with us today. Join us next time where Task Force members Michael Barrington-Hibbert and Peter Scott will discuss how organisations across the UK are getting involved and making a difference. For more information on the Socioeconomic Diversity Task Force, please type the City of London Who Gets Ahead into your search bar to find our webpage and sign up to our newsletter to stay up to date. On social media, please visit City of London Corporation on LinkedIn. On Twitter, it's City of London, and on YouTube, The Global City. Who Gets Ahead is produced by trading and education firm OSTC. Thank you for your kind support of this series, and find out more at OSTC on Twitter and OSTC Limited on LinkedIn.